The wagon rattled into Wallace, Idaho territory on a dusty September afternoon in 1878, carrying a woman whose eyes held more fear than hope. And Yates Garrett knew from the moment he saw her that his carefully ordered life was about to change forever. He had been standing outside the mercantile, talking to Sheriff Morrison about cattle rustlers, when the covered wagon pulled up across the street at the boarding house. The driver, an elderly man with a weathered face, climbed down first, then turned to help his passenger. Yates watched as a young woman emerged, her dark hair pinned tightly beneath a plain bonnet, her dress simple but well-mended. What caught his attention was not her modest beauty, but the way she moved carefully, deliberately, as if every action required consideration and caution. "That would be Delia Foster's daughter," the sheriff said, following Yates's gaze. "Heard he died about a month back. She's come to marry Thomas Ridley." Yates felt his stomach tighten. Thomas Ridley was a harsh man, twice widowed under circumstances that raised quiet questions among the townsfolk. Ridley? Why would she agree to that? Mail order arrangement, I suppose. Her father probably set it up before he passed. She's got no other family from what I heard. Yates watched as the woman flinched when the elderly driver touched her elbow to steady her. It was not a dramatic movement, just a barely perceptible pulling away, a tensing of her shoulders. Something in that small gesture troubled him deeply. "If you will excuse me, Sheriff," Yates said, already moving toward the boarding house. He crossed the dusty street with long strides, his boots kicking up small clouds with each step. The woman was retrieving a worn carpet bag from the wagon when he approached, removing his hat in greeting. "Afternoon, madam. Welcome to Wallace. I am Yates Garrett. I own a ranch about 5 miles north of town." She turned to face him, and he found himself looking into eyes the color of storm clouds, beautiful and haunted. Up close, he could see she was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with delicate features that would have been striking if not for the wariness that seemed etched into every line of her face. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She did not offer her name. "You are here to see Thomas Ridley." Something flickered across her expression. Fear, resignation. "I am here to marry him, yes. It was my father's arrangement. I knew your father was Delia Foster from Montana Territory. I am sorry for your loss. You knew my father." Her eyes widened slightly. "Not personally, but I heard he was a good man. Worked as a schoolteacher in Helena before he took ill." Delia Foster nodded slowly. "He was a very good man. The best." Her voice caught on the last word. The elderly driver, who had been unloading the rest of her meager belongings, spoke up. "Miss Foster, I need to be getting back before dark. Are you sure you are all right here?" "Yes, thank you, Mr. Patterson. You have been very kind." As the wagon pulled away, Delia stood on the wooden walkway looking lost and very much alone. Yates found himself unwilling to simply walk away and leave her to her fate. "Miss Foster, I do not mean to speak out of turn, but Thomas Ridley is not a good man. If you are only marrying him because you feel you have no choice, I want you to know that there are other options." She looked at him with those storm cloud eyes, and he saw a flash of something, maybe hope, maybe just curiosity. "What other options does a woman with no family and no means have, Mr. Garrett?" "Well, there's always honest work. Mrs. Chen, who runs the boarding house, is always looking for help. The school teacher, Miss Adelaide, is getting on in years and could use an assistant. Or," he paused, not quite believing what he was about to say, "you could marry someone else." "I do not know anyone else here. You know me now." The words hung in the air between them, surprising them both. Delia stared at him, her expression unreadable. Yates felt heat rise to his face, but he did not look away. "You cannot be serious," she finally said. "I am very serious. I have a good ranch, 300 acres with a solid house and a growing herd. I am 28 years old, never been married, and I can provide well for a wife. I do not drink to excess. I do not gamble, and I have never raised my hand to a woman or child. You do not know me. I could be terrible. You could be. But I know Thomas Ridley, and I would not want to see any woman marry him, especially not one who looks as frightened as you do right now. Delia was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to determine whether he could be trusted. Finally, she said, "Why would you do this for a stranger? Maybe because you are a stranger. Maybe because my own mother once needed help and someone gave it to her. Maybe because it is the right thing to do. Mr. Garrett, I need to be honest with you. I cannot." She paused, struggling with the words. "I am not well suited to be a wife in all the ways a husband might expect." Yates understood what she was trying to say, and the protective instinct that had been growing since he first saw her intensified. "Has someone hurt you, Miss Foster?" She flinched at the direct question, her arms wrapping around herself. "That is not a proper question." "You are right, and I apologize. But if you are asking me if I would be a patient husband, if I would give you time and respect your boundaries, then yes. Yes, I would." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You do not know what you are offering. Then tell me. Tell me what I need to know." She looked around as if worried someone might overhear, though the street was largely empty in the afternoon heat. "Can we speak somewhere more private?" Yates gestured to a bench outside the general store, shaded by the overhanging roof. They sat, leaving a respectful distance between them, and Delia folded her hands tightly in her lap. "My father was ill for nearly a year before he died. He worried about what would become of me. He had a friend who knew of Thomas Ridley, a man looking for a wife. The arrangement was made through letters. I never wanted to marry him, or anyone really, but I could not refuse my father's dying wish." "Why did you not want to marry?" Her hands clenched tighter. 3 years ago, I was engaged to a man in Helena, James Whittaker. He was charming and kind, at least at first. After we were engaged, he changed. He became possessive, controlling. When I tried to end the engagement, She stopped, her breathing becoming shallow. Yates waited, giving her time. "He forced himself on me. Afterwards, he said no one would believe me, that we were engaged and it was his right. My father believed me, thank God. He broke the engagement and threatened to have James arrested, but James's family was wealthy and influential. They left town instead, and there were rumors. People said I was damaged, that I had led him on. My father never doubted me, but the talk followed us everywhere." Anger burned hot in Yates's chest, not at her but at the man who had hurt her and the society that had blamed her for it. "I believe you, Miss Foster. What happened to you was not your fault." She looked at him with such surprise that it broke his heart. "You do? Of course I do. A man who would do such a thing is no man at all. He is a coward and a criminal." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Since then, I cannot bear to be touched. Even innocent touches make me freeze up. My father understood, but a husband would expect, would require things that I do not know if I can give." "Miss Foster, Delia, if I may call you that." She nodded. "Delia, if you agree to marry me instead of Ridley, I promise you this. I will never force you, never push you, never make you feel unsafe. We can have a marriage in name only if that is what you need, or we can work together at your pace to build something more. Either way, you will be protected and provided for. But why? Why would you do this?" Yates thought about his answer carefully. "My father was a hard man. He believed in duty and discipline above all else. When I was 12, I watched him beat our horse because it shied at a snake. The horse died 3 days later. My mother finally left him after that, took me and my sister with her. We had nothing, but a rancher named Samuel Brennan gave my mother work, and gave me a chance to learn the cattle trade. He showed me that strength is not about dominating others but protecting them. I built my ranch from nothing with his help and guidance. He died 2 years ago, and before he passed, he made me promise something. What was that? He made me promise that if I ever saw someone who needed help, really needed it, I would not turn away. He said too many men in this world take advantage of those with less power, and it was up to good men to even the balance. Yates met her eyes. You need help. I can give it. It is as simple as that. Delia was quiet for a long time, and Yates could see her wrestling with the decision. Finally, she said, if I agree to this, I need you to promise me something else. Name it. Teach me to trust again. I do not want to live the rest of my life jumping at shadows. I want to be whole again, or as close to whole as I can be. Can you promise to be patient with that? I promise. We will take it one day at a time, one step at a time, however long it takes. She took a shaky breath. Then yes. Yes, I will marry you instead. The relief that flooded through Yates was immediate and powerful. We should do it today before Ridley finds out you are here. The minister, Reverend Walsh, is a good man. He will marry us. Today. Delia's eyes widened. Unless you need time to think about it more, I do not mean to rush you. No, you are right. If we are going to do this, it should be now, but what about Thomas Ridley? Will he not be angry? Let me worry about Ridley. You just focus on yourself right now. They found Reverend Walsh at the church, a small white building at the end of the main street. The Reverend was a kind-faced man in his 50s with graying hair and gentle eyes. When Yates explained the situation, leaving out the more painful details of Delia's past but making it clear that this was a rescue of sorts, the Reverend agreed immediately. I have had my concerns about Thomas Ridley for some time, Reverend Walsh said. If this young lady is willing to marry you instead, Yates, I am happy to perform the ceremony. But Miss Foster, I need to hear from you that this is your choice. Delia looked at Yates, then back at the Reverend. It is my choice. Mr. Garrett has offered me protection and kindness. That is more than I could have hoped for. Very well. Let me get my wife to serve as a witness. Yates, perhaps you could ask someone as well. Within the hour, they were standing before the Reverend with Mrs. Walsh and Doc Harrison as witnesses. Delia had removed her bonnet, and Yates could see that her dark hair was shot through with strands of auburn that caught the light streaming through the church windows. She was trembling slightly, and when it came time to exchange vows, her voice was barely audible. Yates spoke his vows clearly and firmly, wanting her to hear the commitment in his voice. When Reverend Walsh pronounced them husband and wife, he said, "You may kiss your bride." Yates saw Delia tense, saw the fear flash across her face. Instead of leaning in, he simply reached out and took her hand gently, giving it a soft squeeze. "Hello, Mrs. Garrett," he said quietly. She looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face, and the gratitude in her eyes was unmistakable. "Hello, Mr. Garrett." They signed the marriage certificate, and Reverend Walsh filed it away in the church records. As they were leaving, Yates noticed a man storming up the church steps. Thomas Ridley. Ridley was a big man, thick through the shoulders with a hard face and cold eyes. He glared at Delia, then at Yates. "What is going on here? This woman is supposed to marry me." "Miss Foster has changed her mind," Yates said calmly. "She is Mrs. Garrett now. We were just married." Ridley's face turned red. "That is not legal. We had a contract." "A contract made by her late father without her consent," Reverend Walsh interjected. "She is a grown woman with the right to choose her own husband. That choice is made and legally binding. I suggest you accept it and move on, Mr. Ridley. I paid good money for her passage here." "I will reimburse you for any expenses," Yates said. "Send me an accounting and I will settle it." Ridley took a step toward Delia, and Yates immediately moved between them. "I think you should leave now, Ridley." For a moment, it seemed like Ridley might try something, but then Sheriff Morrison appeared at the bottom of the church steps. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" "No problem, Sheriff," Yates said. "Mr. Ridley was just leaving." Ridley shot them all a venomous look but turned and stalked away. Yates felt Delia release a breath behind him. "Thank you, Sheriff," Yates said. Morrison tipped his hat. "Congratulations on your marriage, Yates." "Madam," he nodded to Delia. "I had a feeling something like this might happen." "Glad it worked out this way." After the sheriff left, Yates turned to Delia. "We should head to the ranch. It is about an hour's ride." "Do you ride?" "Yes, my father taught me." They stopped by the stable where Yates kept his horse when he was in town, a sturdy bay gelding named Copper. He also rented a gentle mare for Delia and loaded her carpetbag onto his saddle. As they rode out of Wallace, Yates could see Delia starting to relax slightly, her shoulders dropping from their tense position. The ride took them through rolling hills dotted with pine and scrub brush. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the landscape, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage. Yates pointed out landmarks along the way, trying to keep conversation light and easy. "That is the Miller property to the east. They raise sheep, which makes them unpopular with the cattle ranchers, but they are good people. To the west is unclaimed territory, mostly used for grazing. My land starts at that creek up ahead." As they crossed the creek, the land opened up into a broad valley. In the distance, Delia could see a house and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed on the slopes, their red and white coats bright against the dry grass. "It is beautiful," Delia said softly. "It has been a lot of work, but I am proud of it. The house is not fancy, but it is solid." The house was a simple but well-built structure of wood and stone with a covered porch across the front. Smoke curled from the chimney, and as they approached, a man emerged from the barn. "That is Luis Martinez," Yates explained. "He has worked for me for 3 years. Good man, knows cattle better than anyone." Luis was perhaps 35, lean and weathered with a friendly smile. He looked surprised to see Yates with a woman, but he tipped his hat politely. "Luis, this is my wife, Delia. We were married this afternoon." Luis's eyebrows shot up, but he recovered quickly. "Congratulations, boss, madam. Welcome to the Garrett Ranch." "Thank you," Delia said quietly. "Luis, could you take care of the horses? I am going to show Delia inside." "Of course." Yates helped Delia dismount, careful to let her step away before taking her bag. He led her up the porch steps and through the front door into the main room. The interior was clean but Spartan, furnished with handmade furniture that was functional rather than decorative. A stone fireplace dominated one wall and 2 doors led off to other rooms. "It is not much," Yates said, suddenly seeing his home through her eyes and finding it lacking. "It is warm and clean," Delia said. "That is more than enough. The bedroom is through there," he gestured to one door. "I will sleep out here on the couch. There is a washroom behind the house with a pump. Luis lives in the bunkhouse by the barn, so you do not need to worry about privacy. The kitchen is just through there. I am not much of a cook, I am afraid, but we have supplies." Delia set down her bag and looked around, her arms wrapped around herself again. She looked exhausted both physically and emotionally. "Would you like to rest?" Yates asked. "It has been a long day." "I am tired, but I am also hungry. I have not eaten since this morning." "Then let me make us something. I may not be fancy, but I can manage beans and bacon and biscuits." "Can I help?" "If you would like, though you are welcome to rest." She followed him into the kitchen, a small room with a cast iron stove, a table, and open shelves holding dishes and food supplies. As Yates started a fire in the stove and pulled out ingredients, Delia watched from a careful distance. "Tell me about your ranch," she said. "How many cattle do you have?" "About 200 head right now. I started with 23 years ago. Lewis and I handle most of the work, though during Roundup we hire extra hands. We sell beef to the mining camps and to buyers who ship it to cities back east. It is good business if you can survive the hard winters and keep the rustlers away." "Is rustling a big problem?" "It can be. We have had a few heads stolen over the years, but nothing too serious. Most of the trouble comes from cougars and bears going after the calves." He mixed up biscuit dough as he talked, falling into an easy rhythm. Delia began to relax slightly, the conversation about ordinary things seeming to ease her tension. "What about you?" Yates asked as he put the biscuits in the oven. "What did you do before all this?" "I helped my father teach. He ran a small school in Helena and I assisted with the younger children. I love teaching, seeing them learn to read and discover books. We have a school in Wallace, but it is just Miss Adelaide, and she has nearly 40 students. She could probably use help." "I would like that. I need to do something useful. I do not want to just sit in this house all day." "You can do whatever you want, Delia. This is your home now, too." She looked at him with those storm cloud eyes, and he saw the question in them. "What exactly do you expect from me, Mr. Garrett? What are the rules of this arrangement?" Yates turned from the stove to face her fully. "I expect honesty. I expect you to tell me when you are uncomfortable or afraid or need something. As for rules, there is only one. You are safe here. Always. That is the only rule that matters. But surely you will expect me to cook and clean and do the work of a wife. I expect us to work together to make this ranch and this marriage function. If you want to cook and clean, that is fine. If you would rather help with the cattle or the books or teaching in town, that is fine too. We will figure it out together. What about the other duties of a wife?" He knew what she was asking, and he wanted to answer carefully. "I told you that I would be patient, and I meant it. If that side of marriage is never comfortable for you, then it never happens. I will not lie and say I would not hope for more someday, but only if and when you are ready. There is no timeline, no expectation. But you must want children, an heir for your ranch. I would like children someday, yes, but not at the cost of your well-being. We will cross that bridge if and when we come to it." Delia was quiet for a long moment. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I do not know. Someone who would see me as a bargain, I suppose. Damaged goods that he could acquire cheaply." "You are not damaged, Delia. You are hurt, and that is different. Hurt can heal." Tears filled her eyes again. "I hope you are right." They ate dinner mostly in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. The food was simple but filling, and Delia ate more than Yates expected, which he took as a good sign. Afterward, she insisted on helping wash the dishes, and they worked side by side at the basin, not touching but sharing the space. When the work was done, Yates showed her to the bedroom. It was a simple room with a large bed covered in a handmade quilt, a dresser, and a small table with a lamp. A window looked out over the valley. "There are extra blankets in the trunk if you get cold. I will be right outside if you need anything. Just call out." "Mr. Garrett, Yates, I want you to know that I am grateful, truly grateful for what you have done." "You do not need to be grateful. We made a deal that benefits us both. You get safety and protection. I get a wife and a partner, someone to share this life with. That is worth more than you might think." She managed a small smile, the first real smile he had seen from her. It transformed her face, giving him a glimpse of the woman she might have been before trauma stole her ease and confidence. "Good night, Delia." "Good night, Yates." He closed the door behind him and went to the small barn where he stored extra hay. He gathered enough to make a more comfortable bed on the couch than just blankets alone would provide. Lewis came in from the bunkhouse, as Yates was arranging his makeshift bed. "Boss, I do not mean to pry, but what just happened? You left this morning a bachelor and came back married." Yates explained the situation in broad strokes, leaving out the details of Delia's trauma but making it clear that this was a marriage born of necessity rather than romance. Lewis nodded thoughtfully. "She is lucky you found her before Ridley did. That man has a reputation." "What kind of reputation?" "His first wife died in a fall. His second wife left in the middle of the night and was found 3 days later, half dead from exposure, saying she preferred to die in the wilderness than go back to him. The sheriff ran Ridley out of Montana territory after that, which is how he ended up here." Cold dread settled in Yates's stomach. "I had heard rumors, but I did not know the details. You did the right thing today, boss. That girl would have been in serious trouble." "She is not a girl, Lewis. She is a grown woman who has been through hell. I need you to treat her with respect and give her space. She has reasons to be wary of men." Lewis's expression sobered. "I understand. I will make sure she knows she is safe here." "Thank you." After Lewis left, Yates lay on the couch staring at the ceiling beams. His whole life had changed in a matter of hours. He had a wife who flinched at touch and carried deep wounds. What had he been thinking, offering marriage to a stranger? And yet, he did not regret it. When he had seen her standing there, alone and frightened, something in him had known he needed to help her. He thought about her request. "Teach me to trust again." That was a tall order, maybe an impossible one, but he had promised, and Yates Garrett did not break his promises. He would just have to figure it out as they went along. In the bedroom, Delia sat on the edge of the bed, still dressed, trying to process everything that had happened. This morning she had woken up dreading her arrival in Wallace and her marriage to Thomas Ridley. Tonight she was married to a different man entirely, a man who had promised to protect her and expect nothing in return. She wanted to believe him, but trust was not something she could simply choose. It had to be earned, built slowly over time. Still, there was something about Yates Garrett that made her want to try. Maybe it was the way he had moved between her and Ridley without hesitation. Maybe it was the way he had foregone the wedding kiss when he saw her fear. Or maybe it was simply the quiet sincerity in his voice when he made his promises. She changed into her nightgown and slipped under the quilt. The bed was comfortable, and the room felt safe with its solid walls and sturdy door. For the first time in months, since her father had taken his final turn for the worse, Delia felt like she could breathe. She fell asleep faster than she expected, exhausted by emotion and travel. The next morning, Yates woke to the sound of the rooster crowing and morning light streaming through the windows. He sat up, stiff from the couch, and saw that the bedroom door was still closed. He moved quietly, not wanting to disturb Delia, and went out to help Lewis with the morning chores. The cattle needed to be checked, the horses fed and watered, and repairs made to a section of fence that had been damaged by wind. Lewis worked alongside him, both men falling into the familiar rhythm of ranch work. "How is married life?" Lewis asked with a slight grin as they mended the fence. "About 4 hours old, so hard to say," Yates replied. "Ask me again in a few months." "Fair enough. Is she going to be all right, you think?" "I hope so. She has been through a lot, but she is strong. I can see it in her." When they returned to the house around mid-morning, Yates found Delia in the kitchen. She had changed into a simple work dress, her hair braided down her back, and she was standing at the stove making coffee. The smell filled the house, rich and welcoming. "Good morning," he said from the doorway, not wanting to startle her by entering suddenly. She turned, and he saw that she looked better this morning, less exhausted, though the wariness in her eyes remained. "Good morning. I hope you do not mind that I made coffee." I found the beans in the cupboard. Of course I do not mind. This is your home. You do not need permission to use anything here. She poured 2 cups and brought them to the small kitchen table. They sat across from each other, and for a moment neither spoke, both sipping the strong, hot coffee. "Did you sleep well?" Yates asked. "Better than I expected, actually. The bed is comfortable and it was quiet. I am used to town noises. It gets very quiet out here. Takes some getting used to. I think I will like it." They lapsed into silence again, but it was not uncomfortable. Finally, Delia spoke. "What happens now? What is a normal day like here?" "Well, I usually wake around dawn, help Lewis with the morning chores, then work on whatever needs doing. Could be mending fence, moving cattle, cutting hay, doctoring sick animals. In the winter, we bring the herd closer to the house and make sure they have access to water. Evenings I do bookkeeping, read, or sometimes ride into town for supplies or socializing. It sounds like a lot of work. It is, but it is good work, honest work. And it is mine, no one can take it from me. What would you like me to do? How can I be useful?" Yates considered his answer. "What would you like to do? What would make you feel at home here? I am good with numbers. My father taught me bookkeeping. I could help with that if you would like. And I enjoy cooking when I have good ingredients to work with. Your supplies are, well, basic," he laughed. "That is a kind way of putting it. I am a bachelor, or was. I bought what kept me alive, not what tasted good. If you want to make a list, we can ride into town tomorrow and stock the pantry properly." "I would like that. And I meant what I said about teaching. I will introduce you to Miss Adelaide. I am sure she would love the help." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Yates and Lewis worked the ranch while Delia took over the domestic sphere, and the difference was immediately noticeable. The house, which had been clean but stark, became a home. She brought in wildflowers for the table, made curtains for the windows from fabric she bought in town, and cooked meals that made both men look forward to dinner. But more than the physical improvements, Yates noticed Delia herself starting to change. She smiled more often. She sang quietly to herself while she worked. She began to explore the ranch, taking walks in the afternoons when her work was done, always careful to stay within sight of the house at first, then gradually venturing further. She also began helping with the bookkeeping, and Yates discovered she had a sharp mind for business. She found errors in his calculations that had cost him money, suggested better prices for his cattle sales, and organized his records in a way that made everything easier to manage. True to his word, Yates introduced her to Miss Adelaide, the schoolteacher. Adelaide Stewart was a thin, energetic woman in her 60s who had been teaching in Wallace for nearly 20 years. She welcomed Delia with open arms and within a week had her helping 3 mornings a week with the younger children. Delia came home from her first day teaching with a glow in her eyes that Yates had never seen before. "They are wonderful," she said over dinner. "So eager to learn. There is a little boy, Timothy, who is 6 years old and just learning his letters. Today he sounded out his first word, cat, all by himself. You should have seen his face." "I am glad you enjoyed it," Yates said, finding himself smiling at her enthusiasm. "Miss Adelaide said she is planning to retire in a year or 2. She asked if I might consider taking over the school. Would you want to? I think I would. It feels good to be useful, to do something that matters." As the weeks turned into a month, then 2, Yates found himself increasingly drawn to his wife. She was intelligent and kind, with a quiet strength that showed in small ways. He loved the way she read in the evenings, completely absorbed in whatever book she had borrowed from the small library in town. He loved her laugh, rare but genuine when it came. He loved the way she treated the ranch animals with gentle care, earning the trust of even the most skittish horses. but he was also intensely aware of her boundaries. She still flinched if touched unexpectedly. She kept physical distance between them, even in small spaces. At night, she retreated to the bedroom and he to the couch, and though he sometimes wished things were different, he never pushed. Then one evening in late November, as the first snow of the season began to fall, something shifted. They were sitting by the fire after dinner, Yates mending a bridle and Delia reading. She looked up from her book and watched him work for a moment before speaking. "Yates, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy? With this marriage, I mean, with how things are." He set down his work and looked at her. "Yes, I am happy. Are you?" "I am happier than I have been in years. That is not something I expected to feel again." She paused, then continued. "But I wonder if you are lonely. You have kept every promise you made to me. You have been patient and kind and given me space, but that must be hard for you." "Delia, I knew what I was offering when I proposed this arrangement. I do not regret it. But do you ever want more?" The direct question caught him off guard. He could lie, could tell her that he was perfectly content with the status quo, but he had promised her honesty. "Yes," he said quietly, "I want more, but only if you want it too and only when you are ready. There is no rush." She was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. "I think I might want more too. I am just afraid." His heart began to beat faster. "What are you afraid of?" "I am afraid that when you touch me, I will panic. I am afraid that I will disappoint you, that I am too broken to be a real wife. I am afraid that you will become frustrated and angry, and then everything good we have built will be destroyed." Yates set aside the bridle and moved from his chair to sit on the floor near her feet, still at a distance, but closer than they usually sat. "I need you to hear me, really hear me. You are not broken. You were hurt by someone who should have protected you, and that left scars. But scars do not mean broken. As for disappointing me, that is impossible. Whatever you can give, whenever you can give it, will be enough. And I promise you, I will never become angry or frustrated with you for having boundaries." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "How can you be so patient?" "Because you are worth it. Because what we are building here matters more than my immediate wants. And because I am starting to care for you, Delia, more than I planned to, more than I probably should given the circumstances of our marriage." She looked at him with wide eyes. "You care for me?" "Yes. I wake up looking forward to coffee with you in the morning. I find myself rushing through chores so I can come back for lunch and hear about your day. I lay on that couch at night and wish I could hold you, not for passion, but just to know you are close. So yes, I care for you, very much." "I care for you too," she whispered. "That terrifies me almost as much as the idea of intimacy does." "Why does it terrify you?" "Because caring means being vulnerable. It means you have the power to hurt me. I do have that power, just as you have the power to hurt me. That is what happens when people open their hearts to each other. But it is also what makes connection real. We can protect ourselves completely and be safe but alone, or we can take the risk of being vulnerable and find something worth having." She wiped her tears away with the back of her hand. "I want to try. I want to learn to trust you fully, to be close to you without fear, but I do not know how. We will figure it out together the same way we have figured everything else out, one day at a time, one step at a time. Can we start now? Something small. What did you have in mind?" She took a shaky breath. "Can you hold my hand?" It was such a simple request, but Yates understood the courage it took for her to ask. He slowly extended his hand, palm up, and waited. Delia stared at his hand for a long moment, as if gathering her resolve, then reached out and placed her smaller hand in his. The moment their skin touched, she tensed, her breathing becoming rapid. Yates stayed perfectly still, letting her adjust, not tightening his grip or moving at all. Slowly, over the course of several minutes, he felt her relax. Her breathing evened out. Her fingers, which had been rigid, softened against his palm. "How does this feel?" he asked quietly. "Strange, frightening, but also nice. Your hand is warm." "Your hand is cold. Are you warm enough?" "I can add wood to the fire." "No, I am fine. I think my hands are just always cold." They sat like that for perhaps 10 minutes, hands joined, neither speaking. Finally, Delia said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me do this at my own pace. For not making me feel foolish for being afraid of something so simple." "Holding your hand is not simple, Delia. It is trust. It is vulnerability. It is a gift, and I do not take it lightly." She squeezed his hand gently, then released it. "I am tired. I think I will go to bed now. Sleep well." After she had gone into the bedroom and closed the door, Yates sat by the fire for a long time, staring at the hand that had held hers. He could still feel the ghost of her touch, and something in his chest felt full to bursting. This was progress, real progress. And if it took months or years to build on it, he would wait. She was worth waiting for. The next morning, Yates woke to find Delia already up and making breakfast. She greeted him with a shy smile, and when she handed him his coffee, her fingers brushed against his deliberately. It was just a moment of contact, but intentional, and it made his heart soar. Over the following weeks, these small touches became more common. She would brush past him in the kitchen, their shoulders touching. She would hand him things with that brief contact of fingers. Once, when they were walking back from checking on a cow that had been limping, she took his hand as they walked, holding it for the entire journey home. Winter deepened, and with it came challenges. A blizzard hit in early December, trapping them in the house for 3 days. Lewis was safe in the bunkhouse with plenty of supplies, but Yates and Delia were confined to close quarters, something that would have been awkward in the early days of their marriage, but now felt almost natural. They played cards, read aloud to each other, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. Delia told him about her childhood, about her mother who had died when she was young, about the students she had taught over the years. Yates talked about building his ranch, about his sister who had moved to California and married a shopkeeper, about his dreams for the future. On the second night of the storm, as the wind howled outside and the fire crackled in the hearth, Delia said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" "You are still sleeping on the couch. That cannot be comfortable, especially in this cold." "I am fine, Delia. The fire keeps this room warm enough. But it does not seem fair. That bed is large enough for 2 people. If you stayed on your side and I stayed on mine, we could both be more comfortable." Yates was careful with his response, not wanting to assume this meant more than it did. "Are you sure? I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am sure. I trust you to keep your word, to respect boundaries. And honestly, the thought of you out here cold while I am warm in that bed makes me feel guilty. If you are certain, then yes, I would appreciate sharing the room." That night, they both lay in the large bed, a good 2 feet of space between them, each carefully staying on their own side. Yates could hear Delia's breathing in the darkness, could sense her awareness of his presence just as he was hyper-aware of hers. "Yates," her voice was small in the darkness. "Yes, thank you for being who you are. You do not need to thank me for basic decency, Delia." "Yes, I do. Because it is not as common as you might think. Good night." "Good night." It took a long time for either of them to fall asleep, but eventually they did, each comforted by the presence of the other. After that night, sharing the bed became their new normal. Some nights they talked in the darkness before sleep. Some nights Delia would wake from a nightmare, and Yates would talk to her quietly until she calmed, never touching her unless she reached for him first, which she occasionally did, gripping his hand until the fear passed. Christmas came, and Delia insisted on making it special. She baked pies and cookies, something she had not done since before her father got sick. She and Yates rode into town to attend the Christmas service at the church, and Reverend Walsh smiled at them with satisfaction, clearly pleased that their hasty marriage seemed to be working out. Delia had used some of the household money to buy Yates a new hat, a fine one that must have cost more than she should have spent. He gave her books, 3 of them that he had ordered from a catalog, novels that she had mentioned wanting to read. Her eyes lit up when she unwrapped them, and she threw her arms around him in an impulsive hug before immediately pulling back, her face flushed. "I am sorry. I did not mean to," she began. "You do not need to apologize," he said gently. "I welcome your affection whenever you want to give it." She looked at him for a long moment, then stepped forward deliberately and hugged him again, slower this time, letting him carefully wrap his arms around her. They stood like that for several heartbeats before she pulled back. "That was nice," she said, sounding surprised. Yes, it was. New Year came and went, and January brought deep cold and short days. The work of the ranch continued, harder now with ice and snow to contend with. Yates and Lewis worked long hours keeping the cattle safe and fed. Delia kept the house warm and meals ready, and continued her work at the school, though on the coldest days. She stayed home rather than risk the journey. One afternoon in late January, Delia rode out to where Yates and Lewis were working to bring them hot coffee and food. The sight of her on horseback, bundled in a warm coat and scarf he had bought her, made Yates's heart squeeze. She had grown in confidence so much since that first day when she arrived in Wallace, frightened and alone. "You did not have to come all the way out here," Yates said as she dismounted. "It is cold. I wanted to. Besides, I know you two probably did not stop for lunch." She was right. They had not. They sat on logs and ate the sandwiches and drank the coffee gratefully. Lewis excused himself after eating to check on some cattle over the ridge, giving them a moment alone. "How are you really doing?" Yates asked. "You have seemed quiet lately." Delia was silent for a moment, then said, "I have been thinking about my father. He died just 5 months ago, but it feels like a lifetime. So much has changed." "You think he would approve of us, I mean?" "Yes. He would have liked you. He always said the measure of a man was not how he treated his equals, but how he treated those with less power. You treat everyone with respect, from the sheriff to the Chinese laundry woman that everyone else ignores. He would have respected that." "I wish I could have met him. I wish you could have too." She paused. "Yates, can I tell you something, always? I think I am falling in love with you. I did not expect to. I did not even think I was capable of it anymore. But I am." The words hit him like a physical blow in the best possible way. "Delia, I am already in love with you. I have been for weeks now, maybe longer." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Really, really. You are smart and kind and brave. You have taken something terrible that happened to you and refused to let it define you. Watching you grow stronger every day, watching you claim joy again, has been the greatest privilege of my life." She moved closer to him on the log where they sat. "I want to kiss you, but I am afraid." "Then do not, or try, and if you need to stop, stop. There is no wrong answer here." Slowly she leaned toward him. He stayed still, letting her control the moment entirely. Her lips brushed against his, soft and hesitant. She pulled back, breathing hard, then leaned in again, more confident this time. The kiss was sweet and gentle, and when she pulled away, she was smiling. "That was all right," she said. "Just all right," he teased gently. "It was more than all right. It was wonderful." From that day forward, physical affection became a more natural part of their relationship. Delia would kiss him goodbye in the mornings and hello when he came back in the evenings. She held his hand openly now, whether walking or sitting together. She leaned against him when they sat by the fire. But Yates was still careful, still let her set the pace. He never initiated more than she offered, never pushed for the physical intimacy that they had not yet shared. He could wait. He would wait forever if that was what she needed. February brought a thaw, and with it, mud and mess. The cattle grew restless, ready for spring grazing. One morning, Lewis came running to the house, his face tight with worry. "Boss, we have a problem. Ridley and some men just cut through our fence and are driving off about 20 head. Yates grabbed his rifle and his coat. "Ride to town and get the sheriff. I will follow them and try to keep eyes on them." "Yates, no," Delia said, fear sharp in her voice. "Let them go. It is not worth you getting hurt. Those cattle represent months of work and hundreds of dollars. I have to try to stop them." "Then I am coming with you." "Absolutely not. I can ride as well as any man, and I can shoot too. My father taught me. You need someone to watch your back, and Lewis needs to get the sheriff. That leaves me." There was no time to argue. Yates nodded curtly, and they mounted up together, riding hard toward where the fence had been cut. They could see the group of rustlers in the distance, driving the cattle toward the hills. "We will follow at a distance and wait for the sheriff," Yates said. "I do not want a confrontation unless absolutely necessary." They followed the rustlers for nearly an hour, hanging back far enough to avoid detection. But then one of the rustlers looked back and spotted them. Thomas Ridley wheeled his horse around and rode toward them, 3 other men following. "Well, if it is not Garrett and his little bride," Ridley sneered. "You should have stayed home, Yates. This does not concern you anymore." "Those are my cattle, Ridley. You are stealing from me." "I am taking what I am owed. You stole my bride. I figure these cattle are fair compensation." "The law does not see it that way. Return my cattle and ride out of here, and we will call it even." "Or what? You will shoot me. You do not have the stomach for it, Garrett. Everyone knows you are soft." Yates kept his rifle trained on Ridley. "Do not test me." One of Ridley's men tried to circle around, and Delia turned her horse to keep him in sight, her own rifle at the ready. The tension was thick, everyone waiting for someone to make the first move. Then the sound of approaching horses broke the standoff. Sheriff Morrison and 3 deputies crested the ridge, riding hard. Ridley cursed and spun his horse, trying to escape, but the deputies were faster. Within minutes, all 4 rustlers were caught, their hands being tied. "Thank you, Sheriff," Yates said, his heart still pounding. "Thank Lewis." He rode into town like the devil was chasing him. "You all right, Mrs. Garrett?" "Yes, Sheriff, I am fine," Delia said, though her hands were shaking slightly as she lowered her rifle. "Ridley, you are under arrest for cattle rustling," Morrison said. "This time you are going to jail." As they drove the cattle back to the ranch, with the sheriff and his prisoners heading to town, Yates reached over and took Delia's hand. "You were very brave today," he said. "I was terrified," she admitted, "but I was not going to let you face that alone. You stood beside me, faced down armed men, and never wavered. That is the definition of bravery. I suppose I have changed, have not I? 6 months ago I could barely leave the house. Today I faced down the man I was supposed to marry with a rifle in my hands. You have changed. You have healed. That does not mean you are all the way there yet, and that is fine. But you are not the same frightened woman who stepped off that wagon in September. No, I am not. I am Mrs. Yates Garrett, ranch wife and school teacher, and I am not afraid anymore, at least not of most things." That evening, after Lewis had been thanked profusely and sent to the bunkhouse, after the cattle were counted and secured, after dinner was eaten and dishes washed, Delia and Yates sat together on the couch by the fire. "Yates, I need to tell you something," Delia said. "What is it?" "Today, when Ridley showed up when there was real danger, all I could think about was you, about losing you, about how empty my life would be if something happened to you, and I realized something." "What did you realize?" "I realized that I do not want to wait anymore." I do not want fear to keep me from living fully. I want to be your wife in every sense of the word. His breath caught. Delia, are you sure? I do not want you to feel pressured because of what happened today. I am not. I am sure. I have been thinking about this for weeks now, building up courage. Today just crystallized it for me. I love you, Yates. I trust you. I want to be close to you in every way. If at any moment you want to stop, he began, then we will stop. I know, I trust you. She stood and held out her hand to him. He took it, his heart hammering, and let her lead him to their bedroom. What happened next was gentle and slow. Yates letting Delia control every moment, checking in with her constantly, ready to stop if she showed any sign of distress. There were a few moments of tension, a few times when old fear flickered across her face, but each time Yates stopped, held her, reminded her that she was safe, and she chose to continue. When it was over, they lay together in the darkness, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "I am more than all right. I am free. For the first time since James hurt me, I feel like my body is my own again. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for helping me reclaim this. You did the hard work, Delia. You chose to heal, chose to trust again. I just gave you a safe place to do it." She lifted her head to look at him, her eyes shining in the dim light. "We did it together. That is what marriage should be, should not it? Two people helping each other become the best versions of themselves." "Yes, that is exactly what it should be." She kissed him softly. "I love you, Yates Garrett. I love you too, Delia Garrett." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, both finally feeling complete in a way they had not before. Spring arrived with a rush of green and wildflowers. The cattle were moved to higher pastures, and the work of the ranch intensified with calving season. Delia continued teaching at the school, and Miss Adelaide officially announced her retirement, recommending Delia as her replacement. The town council approved, and Delia would take over full-time in the fall. Thomas Ridley was tried and sentenced to 5 years in prison for cattle rustling, along with his accomplices. Yates and Delia attended the trial, and when the verdict was read, Delia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Ridley could not hurt her or anyone else now. One warm May evening, Delia had news to share. She had been feeling unwell in the mornings for the past week, and a visit to Doc Harrison had confirmed her suspicion. "Yates, I am with child," she said over dinner, unable to keep the joy from her voice. He stared at her for a moment, processing the words, then let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. "Are you sure? When? Doc thinks late November or early December. Are you happy?" "Happy, I am thrilled. How are you feeling? Are you well? Do you need anything?" She laughed at his sudden flurry of concern. "I am fine. A little sick in the mornings, but Doc says that is normal. He says I am healthy and everything looks good." That night, lying in bed with Yates's hand resting gently on her still flat stomach, Delia felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. A year ago, she had been broken and afraid, unable to imagine a future that held anything but pain. Now she was loved, safe, whole again, and carrying the child of a good man who had shown her that not all people hurt, that trust could be rebuilt, that joy could be reclaimed. "What are you thinking?" Yates asked, sensing her reflective mood. "I am thinking about how far I have come. About how you saved me." "We saved each other," he corrected. "I was lonely before you came, living but not really alive. You brought light into this house and into my life. Do you think our child will have a good life? I think our child will have a wonderful life. They will grow up on this ranch with parents who love them and love each other. They will be taught to be strong but also kind, to work hard but also to value rest. They will know they are safe and wanted every single day of their life." Tears slipped down Delia's cheeks. "That is all I want." for them to never know the fear I knew. They will not. I promise you that. Summer passed in a blur of work and preparation. Delia's belly grew, and she glowed with health and happiness. The school term ended, and she spent her days preparing for the baby and helping with lighter ranch work. Yates and Lewis hired 2 more hands to help with the summer work, and the ranch prospered. Delia's strength and confidence continued to grow. She was no longer the frightened woman who flinched at unexpected touch. She walked with her head high, met people's eyes, laughed freely. She had even become friendly with several women in town, including Mrs. Chen from the boarding house and Martha Willis, the doctor's wife. In late November, 3 days after the first real snow of the season, Delia went into labor. Martha Willis, who had experience with birthing babies, came to help, as did Doc Harrison. Yates paced outside the bedroom for hours, listening to the sounds from within and feeling helpless. Finally, as dawn broke over the valley, he heard the thin, strong cry of a newborn. Martha opened the door, her face exhausted but smiling. "You have a son, Yates, a healthy baby boy, and your wife is tired but well." He rushed into the room to find Delia propped up in bed, sweaty and pale but smiling wider than he had ever seen. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket, and as he approached, he could see a small red face and a shock of dark hair. "Meet your son," Delia said softly. Yates sat carefully on the edge of the bed, staring at the baby in wonder. "He is perfect. Would you like to hold him?" With Delia's help, Yates took the baby into his arms, cradling the tiny, warm weight carefully. The baby opened his eyes, dark blue and unfocused, and something in Yates's heart shifted and expanded in a way he had not known was possible. "We should name him Daniel, after your father," Yates said. Fresh tears spilled from Delia's eyes. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. Daniel Garrett. He would be honored to share a name with a man who raised such an incredible daughter." "Then Daniel it is." The next months were exhausting but joyful. Baby Daniel was healthy and growing fast, his dark hair giving way to lighter brown. He had Delia's eyes and Yates's stubborn chin. Both parents were besotted with him, taking turns walking him when he fussed, marveling at every small change and development. Lewis, who had initially been terrified to hold the baby, became Daniel's fierce protector, carving toys for him and declaring himself the boy's godfather. The 2 new ranch hands, Jake and Michael, both young men in their early 20s, treated the baby like a combination of entertainment and mystery. Delia resumed teaching in the spring, bringing baby Daniel with her to school. The students adored having a baby in the classroom, and the older girls helped watch him while Delia taught. It was unconventional, but it worked, and the town accepted it because everyone loved Mrs. Garrett and knew her story, though not all the painful details. On their first wedding anniversary in September, Yates and Delia rode out to a high meadow on their property, leaving Daniel with Martha Willis for the afternoon. They spread a blanket on the grass and sat together, looking out over the valley that had become their home. "A year ago today, I was a desperate woman marrying a stranger," Delia said. "Now I am the wife of the man I love, the mother of a beautiful baby boy, and happier than I ever thought possible. A year ago today, I took a chance on a frightened woman who asked me to teach her to trust again," Yates said. "Best decision I ever made. Did I learn? To trust again, I mean." "What do you think?" She considered the question. "Yes, I trust you completely. I trust Lewis and Doc Harrison and Martha and Miss Adelaide and so many others. I trust myself, which might be the most important thing. I trust that I can handle what life throws at me because I am strong and capable and not alone. You are all of those things and more." They lay back on the blanket, hand in hand, watching clouds drift across the blue sky. "I want more children," Delia said. Maybe 3 or 4 total. I want Daniel to have siblings the way I never did. Then we will have more children, as many as you want. And I want to expand the school, maybe hire another teacher to help me once all those children arrive. Whatever you want, Delia, whatever makes you happy." She rolled onto her side to look at him. "You make me happy. This life we have built makes me happy. I love you, Yates Garrett, more than I have words to express." He pulled her close, kissing her deeply. "I love you too, Delia. Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who made you a crazy offer in front of a general store. Thank you for seeing past my fear to the person I could become with the right partner." They stayed in the meadow until the sun began to sink toward the mountains, then rode home together to their son and their life, both grateful beyond measure for the unexpected journey that had brought them together. 2 years later, Delia gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Grace, who inherited their father's height and their mother's auburn-streaked hair. 3 years after that, another son arrived, Samuel, named for the man who had given Yates his start in ranching. The house expanded to accommodate the growing family, with Yates and Lewis building additional rooms. The ranch prospered, growing to 500 acres and 400 head of cattle. Delia's school became known as one of the best in the territory, and young teachers came from back east to study her methods. Through it all, Yates and Delia's love deepened. They had their disagreements, as all couples do, about money and child rearing and how to handle various situations. But they always talked through their differences with respect and care, both remembering how they had started and refusing to take their relationship for granted. Daniel grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books and horses in equal measure. The twins were wild and adventurous, keeping everyone on their toes. Samuel was sunny and easygoing, happy as long as he was with his family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yates and Delia sat on the porch of their expanded house, watching their 4 children play in the yard. Lewis had married a widow from town, and they lived in a small house on the property with her 2 daughters. Jake and Michael had both moved on to start their own ranches, and new hands had taken their place. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" Delia asked, her head resting on Yates's shoulder. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like you have always been here." "I feel like I have always been here. That life before, that frightened girl who stepped off the wagon in Wallace, she feels like a different person." She was a different person. "You grew and changed and healed. I am so proud of you. We healed together. You taught me to trust again, just like you promised. But more than that, you taught me that I was worthy of love and respect, that what happened to me was not my fault, that I could be whole again." Their oldest son, Daniel, now 9 years old, ran up to the porch. "Papa, Mama, can we ride out to the creek, please?" "Take your sisters and brother and stay where we can see you," Yates said. The children whooped and ran toward the barn to get their ponies. Yates and Delia watched them go, their hearts full. "We did good," Delia said. "We did very good." "I am thinking maybe one more," she said with a mischievous smile. Yates laughed. "5 children, are you sure? I grew up alone. I want our children to always have family, always have people who love them. One more would round it out nicely." "Then one more it is. Though you do know Lewis says we are going to need to change the ranch name to Garrett Circus at this rate." Delia laughed, the sound bright and free. "Let him tease. I would not change a thing about our life. Neither would I." That evening, after the children were in bed, Yates and Delia stood together looking out at the valley they had made their own. The moon was rising over the mountains, painting the landscape in silver. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Delia asked. "If I had married Ridley like I was supposed to, if you had not been standing on that street corner that day—" "I try not to. Those thoughts are too dark." I think about it sometimes. And then I am so grateful for that moment, for your courage in offering me a different path, for my courage in taking it. We were both brave that day. We have been brave every day since, in small ways and large. Brave enough to trust, brave enough to love, brave enough to build something real together. Yates wrapped his arms around his wife and she leaned back against him, both of them content in the moment. I love our life, Delia said softly. So do I. True to her word, Delia became pregnant again the following spring. This time, she carried the baby easily, barely slowing down even as her belly swelled. In December, she gave birth to another son, whom they named Peter after Yates's late mentor Samuel Brennan's brother, who had also helped the family. 5 children filled the house with noise and laughter, chaos and joy. The older children helped with the younger ones, and all of them were involved in the ranch work as soon as they were able. Yates and Delia taught them to value hard work, education, kindness, and integrity. Daniel, as the oldest, took his responsibilities seriously, often too seriously according to his mother. The twins, Emma and Grace, were inseparable and fearless, climbing trees and racing horses with the ranch hands. Samuel was the peacemaker, always finding ways to help his siblings resolve their disputes. And baby Peter was adored by everyone, chubby and cheerful and easy to love. As the years passed, Wallace grew from a rough mining town into a more established community. A railroad spur reached the town, making it easier to ship cattle to market. More families arrived, bringing diversity and growth. Delia's school expanded to 2 buildings, and she trained 3 other teachers to help handle the increasing number of students. The Garrett Ranch became known as one of the best in Idaho Territory, and Yates was elected to the territorial legislature, where he worked on laws protecting land rights and regulating the cattle industry. He hated being away from his family during legislative sessions, but Delia encouraged him, knowing he could make a difference. On their 20th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration. Daniel was now 19 and working full-time on the ranch, already showing the leadership skills that would eventually let him take over. The twins, at 17, were both planning to attend normal school to become teachers like their mother. Samuel, at 14, was interested in medicine and shadowed Doc Harrison whenever possible. Peter, the baby at 10, was still deciding what he wanted to be, though he showed a talent for drawing and painting. Lewis and his wife Alina hosted the celebration at their house, with tables set up in the yard laden with food. Half the town seemed to be there, all wanting to celebrate the couple who had become pillars of the community. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Reverend Walsh, now quite elderly but still sharp as ever, stood to make a toast. 20 years ago, I married these 2 young people in a hasty ceremony that raised some eyebrows. Yates Garrett, a bachelor rancher, and Delia Foster, a woman who had just arrived in town. Some people wondered if it would last. I am here to say that not only did it last, but it thrived. Yates and Delia have built something remarkable together. Not just this thriving ranch, but a family, a legacy, and an example of what true partnership looks like. They have shown us that love is not just about passion, though I am sure they have that. He paused for laughter, but about commitment, respect, and choosing each other every single day. To Yates and Delia Garrett, may you have many more years together. Everyone raised their glasses and cheered. Delia had tears in her eyes and Yates held her hand tightly. Later, when most of the guests had gone home and the children were helping clean up, Yates and Delia slipped away to walk in the meadow where they had spent their first anniversary. 20 years, Delia said, looking up at the stars. It seems impossible. 20 of the best years of my life, mine too. She turned to face him. You know what I remember most from that first day we met? What? The way you looked at me. Not with pity, not with lust, but with respect. Like I was a person worthy of care and protection. No one had looked at me like that since my father died. It gave me hope when I had none. I saw your strength even then. You were terrified, but you were still standing, still moving forward. That takes incredible courage. I could not have done it without you. You gave me the space to heal, the safety to trust again. You taught me that I could have a good life, that I could be loved for who I was, scars and all. You are the strongest person I know, Delia Garrett. You took trauma that would have broken many people and turned it into compassion. You use what you learn to help your students who are struggling. You create safety for our children so they never have to feel the fear you felt. You are extraordinary. She pulled him close, kissing him with all the love and passion of their 20 years together. I love you, Yates. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I will love you just as long. They stood together under the stars, two people who had found each other by chance and built a life by choice, a life full of love and laughter, challenge and triumph, and most importantly, trust. Idaho achieved statehood in 1890, and the Garrett Ranch continued to prosper under Yates's management and eventually Daniel's partnership. Delia retired from teaching at 50, but continued to work with struggling students privately, never charging those who could not afford to pay. The twins both became teachers, Emma in Wallace and Grace in Boys. Samuel became a doctor, returning to Wallace to take over Doc Harrison's practice when the old doctor finally retired. Peter became an artist whose paintings of the Idaho landscape gained recognition throughout the region. Through it all, Yates and Delia remained the center of their large, growing family. Grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with new energy. Yates built a larger house for Daniel and his wife, while he and Delia moved into a smaller cottage on the property, finally having the quiet they had earned. In their later years, they often sat on the porch of that cottage, holding hands and watching the ranch bustle with activity, 3 generations working together. You have any regrets? Delia asked one day when she was 65 and Yates 71. He thought for a long moment. Not a single one. You, none. Well, maybe one small one. What is that? I wish we had met when we were younger so we could have had even more years together. Yates squeezed her hand. We have had a good run, you and I, the best run. You saved my life, Yates Garrett. And you gave mine meaning, Delia Garrett. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the mountains they had called home for nearly 50 years. Two people who had proven that love built on trust, respect, and patience could weather any storm and grow stronger with every passing year. When Yates died peacefully in his sleep at 79, with Delia holding his hand, the entire town mourned. His funeral was attended by hundreds, all wanting to pay respects to a man who had lived with integrity and kindness. Delia lived another 8 years, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She spent her final years writing her memoirs, wanting her descendants to know the full story of how she had arrived in Wallace broken and afraid, and how one good man's offer of protection and patience had changed everything. She dedicated the book to Yates with a simple inscription: "To my husband who taught me to trust again and in doing so gave me back my life. I loved you from the moment I truly knew you, and I will love you for all eternity." When Delia died at 83, she was buried next to Yates on a hill overlooking their ranch with a stone that read, Delia and Yates Garrett. They built a life on trust, love, and partnership. Their legacy lives on. And it did live on, through 5 children, 16 grandchildren, and eventually dozens of great and great-great-grandchildren. all carrying forward the values that Yates and Delia had embodied: courage in the face of fear, compassion for those in need, and the understanding that true love is built one day at a time, one choice at a time, with patience and trust as its foundation. The Garrett Ranch remained in the family for over a century, and the story of how it all began, with a frightened woman stepping off a wagon and a cowboy brave enough to offer her a different future, became family legend, passed down through generations as a reminder that sometimes the most profound love stories start with a single act of courage and the simple words, "Teach me to trust again."